So on behalf of Fraternity Movement HU, I invite you all for this program. So we have Soumya Dachama with us on this occasion of Ambedkar's birth anniversary. It's our immense pleasure to welcome Professor Soumya Dachama to talk on the topic caste and social distancing. For those who may not be familiar with Soumya Dachama, Soumya is currently a Fulbright scholar at City University of New York, and she's also a professor at Center for Comparative Literature, University of Hyderabad. Uh, and she has been working on different concepts ranging from language, modernity, especially dealing with the questions associated with community, Kodava community in Karnataka and all. Uh, and of course, Soumya was always there with us for all the movements and all the mobilizations in the campuses and all. And she has been an inspiration for us to do a lot of struggles which is being going on in different parts of the country. So it's a pleasure to invite Soumya for this lecture. It's a
We can start, Tahir.
yeah, yes.
One second, I will just mute everybody and unmute Soumya first, and then we can start. Yeah, we can start now.
Hello, everyone. Jai Bhim to you all. I don't think we have ever imagined a meeting like this in times when we are far away from each other. When at these times when things are difficult, I realize there are also very positive things, and it also shows how there are many things that can bring us together even while we are physically far apart. And what brings us together obviously is love, our ideology that binds us together. But we should also remember that it's not just us Ambedkarites or people in the fraternity movement that that are close like this, but there are also other ideologies, opposing ideologies that the virtual media can bring together. Before I begin, I hope all of you, your dear ones, your families are fine and are taking good care of yourselves. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Many of you I know, many of you I don't know, but thank you all for logging in, for listening to me. And thanks to the fraternity movement specifically for organizing this, and especially Tahir. Thank you. I was also thinking that I'm not sure whether to thank Tahir much because in a usual social gathering, I know who my audience is, right? And I also know I almost have an absolute power of the teacher over that audience. Now, this being virtual, this being online, I'm not sure what kind of power I have over my audience. I have warned some of my friends not to speak during this meeting. They are there, I know, but I also know it's a very good thing. Thank you all. I will read from what I wrote. Occasionally I'll look at my reading, my paper, and not at the camera. It's important to note how Ambedkar, his thought, his writing, his speeches have stood the test of times and have always been significant. Even more important is the manner in which Ambedkar's thoughts lend themselves to interpretations that can be useful to understand various contexts. So given today's context of crisis, or what is termed as social distancing in these times of crisis, it's only too obvious that Ambedkar becomes important to us. And in such a crisis like we face today, it's not easy to critique an idea. It is not easy to critique a practice such as social distancing that is also crucial to help ourselves keeping healthy and keeping away from suffering of certain kinds. So given this context where social distancing becomes an essential features of today's survival, uh, we need to understand social distancing at various levels, right? Obviously, one is that you keep a healthy distance from people, but at the same time, we need to distinguish this from the way people have been understanding social distancing and understanding this and circulating this, especially via the social media. Um, Not only me, I'm sure many of you have seen on Facebook or on WhatsApp the way social distancing has been understood and circulated. And many, in fact, many scholars have recommended the usage of the term physical distancing because social distance has huge implications for caste and also race segregation. The problem with social distancing is this. So when the term and practice came into circulation in the last few months, caste practices and people who uphold caste ideologies saw social distancing as a traditional practice which is worthy to be followed. Social distancing as a practice for these people was unfortunately left behind these days, and therefore, because it was left behind, distancing, it brought in dangers of viruses like corona. Nowhere else in the world people talked of social distancing as a traditional virtue. Social distancing as a practice, as I just said, also has a history of race. But talking about race as a traditional virtue means practices of race segregation, keeping people who belong to different races separately. Talking about these practices are never considered valid or legitimate. Although the question of race is far from over, although race is practiced in many subtle ways and privilege of white race remains very visible, we cannot imagine speaking of segregation of race, social distancing as virtuous social distancing. It is impossible to come across any public or even private validation of social distancing of race as a traditional virtue. But then, total social distancing as caste practice is understood by India, is understood in India as traditional virtue. So, what is this virtue of social distancing that many have left behind? And this virtue can only be part of the pride of privileged caste. So, according to many in social media and messages that went around, social distancing was very worthy, was very traditional, and it is very worthy to be followed even today. What does this actually mean? This basically means to me that caste practices are virtuous, and even today, caste is perhaps the only tradition that many can cling to for a virtuous, pure identity. Many messages said many things. I note very few of them here, and how people spoke about the act of greeting by folding hands, that is namaste. And namaste, as you know, does not require the human touch of a hug or kiss. Uh, and people also spoke about taking one's chappal off, maintaining a distance in the roads when people walk, so that even shadows will not fall on you, shadows wouldn't touch each other. These are all practices of traditional social distancing. To this list, you can also include many such practices which are not talked about, but perhaps talked about and which we missed, like walking behind the husband or the father at some distance, to living in different parts of the villages, right? Different castes living in different parts of the villages and therefore maintain a distance from each other, to not let people enter their houses or kitchens of the purer castes, to keep people away who actually keep the whole village clean by calling them unhygienic, to keep people away from places of worship. And there are innumerable instances which are considered virtues of social distancing of caste. These practices, which were and are in practice in vogue, They are in practice not because people think these social distancing practices will keep them healthy, but it is practiced because people of powerful caste think most men and women are inferior, unequal, and therefore have to be kept at a distance, therefore have to be kept behind. Essentially, social distancing then, as practiced traditionally, has always been an unequal, unequal, hierarchical practice, which basically brings us to the bottom line of what I want to say, that caste cannot exist without social distancing. In fact, caste exists, I would say, precisely because of the act of social distancing. And I use Ambedkar from his Castes in India. Ambedkar says, at some point in time in the history of Hindus, the priestly caste class as socially detached itself from the rest of the body of people and through a closed door policy became a caste by itself. So what does this make caste? So this makes caste a very self-enclosed unit. It also makes it almost natural. Caste group and enclosed caste groups is very naturally made to keep away from other castes. And this happens not just by physically distancing oneself, but acts of social distancing, which uh, I mentioned some of them, but also social distancing in terms of marriage, in terms of food, in terms of love, in terms of discrimination, and so on and so forth. In fact, T.N. Madan also points this out, a sociologist who says, in an effort to maintain vertical social distance obviously means that there is a power over one another, right? So these groups practiced mutual exclusion in matters related to eating, marrying, and obviously other practices. So the only way caste propagates itself, as we all know, and Ambedkar very neatly points out, is shutting off marriage, which is the most closest social relationship possible. So by keeping all these kinds of social relations away from each other, caste works by social distancing. To quote Ambedkar again from Who Were the Untouchables, Ambedkar says, caste is not a case of social separation, a mere stoppage of social intercourse for a temporary period. It is a case of territorial segregation and of a cordon sanitaire, putting the impure people inside the barbed wire into a sort of a cage. Every Hindu village as a ghetto. The Hindus live in a village and the untouchables in the ghetto. Unquote. So Ambedkar actually hits the nail on its head. I had to search Wikipedia to see what cordon sanitaire actually meant, and it tells me that cordon sanitaire is the restriction of movement of people into or out of a defined geographical area. So a defined geographical area is cordoned off, such as the sorry, the defined geographical area could be a community, region, country, people, etc., etc. The term originally denoted a barrier used to stop the spread of infectious diseases. It is very clear to him and to us that caste is social distancing, cordon sanitaire, at many levels, especially spatial, territorial, physical, bodily practices, ritual, gendered, sanitizing, purifying, and much more. So caste is cordoned off in caste communities are cordoned off in all these senses and much more. I wrote this write up in 2 days, and I sent it to some of my friends to send some comments and ask them what they thought of this. One of them, Chaitanya, uh, asked this question, and he asked whether social distancing was a fundamental or essential necessity in the formation and functioning of caste in lived practices, right? Whether caste is built on, whether caste is so very essential to social distancing, or it's the other way around, I'm sorry, whether social distancing is essential to the idea and practice of caste itself. He was drawing from an essay called Critique of Caste Violence by Parthasarathi Muthukaru, in which Parthasarathi claims that caste is a relationship and the relationship necessarily determined by violence. So we have two propositions now. One, caste is determined by violence, and what I am trying to point out is caste is determined by social distancing. Parthasarathi sees caste in relational terms, and that caste system works when many castes are positioned in relation to each other in a hierarchical manner. And caste relations are necessarily mediated through many forms of violence, which again now we all know. So drawing from Ambedkar, Parthasarathi shows how violence is fundamental or a necessary entity that is built into the very formation as well as the functioning of caste. So violence becomes very, very essential to the functioning of caste. And we can see this in examples of so-called honor killings, large-scale mass killings, sexual violences, institutional murders, etc. So Chaitanya's question was this: if violence is a fundamental entity to the functioning of caste, then violence, the act of violence, involves touching of other bodies, right? And doesn't this go against the social distance that I have been talking about? So when there is violence, you obviously touch the other body that is untouchable. You are not supposed to touch the body, but the act of violence has to touch the other body. So how do we resolve this kind of a problem, or how do we understand, if not resolve, understand this kind of a problem, now that I have characterized social distancing as a fundamental element in the formation and functioning of caste? I confess that I need to think and read more to justify my claims and also to answer this question very satisfactorily. But yes, I also think caste is built on violence. But then I would like all of us to think together, what is the reason for this kind of a violence? When the rules of caste are broken, it is then that violence emerges, right? Whether you eat from the same plate, or whether you marry a person or love a person of other caste, or when you do something that requires sexual violence and so on. So when rules of social distancing are broken, and that becomes a good reason for caste violence. So violence is a, a breaking of the norms of social distancing precedes violence. So violence is actually a result of breaking the hierarchical norms of caste, is what I am thinking right now. Yes, violence demands that untouchable bodies be touched. One has to touch the untouchable bodies in order to commit an act of violence. And violence involves touching the bodies that one is not supposed to touch. So what happens to social distancing then? The question for me now and for all of us is, what kind of a touch is actually violence, right? Is it a touch that recognizes human dignity? Is it a humane touch of love? Or is it a touch that confirms to social distancing? To all these questions, obviously, answers are quite clear. It is a violent touch. It is not a touch of dignity. It is not a touch of love. And it confirms the rules of social distancing. And such kind of violences is actually a result of breaking the norms of social distancing, breaking the norms of caste relational hierarchy. Getting back to what is happening right now, a recent article which I was reading noted how even before the lockdown in India, one of the earliest measures adopted by Indian elites was to ban the entry of part-time hired domestic help into their residential complexes. Again, there were many messages telling people how it is better to give a paid leave to domestic workers, because according to them, the domestic workers were the main carriers of viruses like this. To which caste do these domestic workers belong to is not very difficult to guess, right? But then the concern of these inhabitants of residential complexes was not whether domestic workers will go without work, will go without food, or whether the domestic workers themselves may suffer the disease. That was not the concern at all. But the concern was so very self-centered, casteist is the word. The concern was basically our people should not get the virus, which is disgusting, not like many other things, not to mention the millions of jokes about how men are learning household chores today, having nothing else better to do. I only want to invoke Kanchailaya and say that all of us perhaps need to know the productive art and skill of survival, right? Men, women of all communities. So how can people living in closed quarters, like in slums, or workers living in crowded dormitories across the world, practice social distancing? When each member of the family, when they do not have the luxury of having a room of one's own, and many other examples that have been pointed out, whether in villages or in urban communities, it's very clear that social distancing as a virtue has always been a privilege of the privileged castes and classes. When I heard of social distancing as a tradition that supposedly kept upper caste healthy, I had many questions. In fact, perhaps all of you might have asked these questions to yourself and joked among ourselves, right? Is social distancing such a tradition? Did it actually keep people healthy because they were socially distanced from one another? In fact, it makes you wonder whether viruses like corona were targeting only Hindu upper castes who, were so very paranoid that viruses were attacking them. Was their environment and surroundings full of infectious germs that it required social distancing? What is it? What is the fear that it took away from them the humane touch, the warmth of being together, the warmth of love, hugging? Forget about people of other castes. Did they apply social distancing to people from within their families? Is also another question which is not very clear. I also found it funny that caste based social distancing kept away germs and viruses that were constantly attacking only certain sections of society. It is even funnier to ask if all these social distancing and glorified virtues of vegetarianism has prevented any virus or disease from attacking virtuous pure caste people. Obviously, the history of diseases world over shows otherwise. There is no pure caste, vegetarian or not, that have been spared from any disease. Viruses and diseases have not discriminated between purity of caste, vegetarian included. What is true, of course, is that the pure castes have had better resources to deal with disasters than lower castes, who more often than not lack financial and other resources for better health care. People have also pointed out how, in fact, this virus is working the other way around, right? Usually, the assumption is diseases attack uh, uh, from the lowered section of society to its upper levels. But whereas this virus is actually working the other way around, is what people are talking about, how corona arrived via people who are globetrotters, who then transferred it to everyone around them. But now, sadly, it is affecting the migrants, the poor, the elderly, which points out not just to the lack of resources underprivileged have, but also to the horrible healthcare system in India and across the world. So in this context, I'm sure we all need to rethink about the systems of public health, public education, what we are doing, we in higher education are doing and thinking about education in such times, and so on and so forth. And there is actually a whole lot of discussion on how education should continue online. While it's very, very basic that we think about internet access, even in central university campuses like in Hyderabad, internet access is not stable, not very great. I am not sure how students in my village or everywhere else who do not even get signals for phone calls study via the distant online mode. And I mean, you can even forget about the access to internet. One has to have a computer. Every child in a house needs to have a computer or a smartphone for all online learning. And I'm not sure how this can work. Of course, there are many other questions whether online education is available only in English or in other languages, in what kind of language, online language is something which we haven't imagined yet. But it also suggests that the current happenings, it also suggests that education in the future, this may just be the beginning. It might be a socially distant kind of an education, virtual, that doesn't actually require the human physical act of being together and learning, but it's enough to be socially distant and learning. Um, Obviously, the most vexed, troubling problem in this crisis of corona has been the plight of the walking migrant. And all of us are aware how this migrant, about whom the academics have already written, they're mostly male, mostly from marginalized castes and communities, mostly from regions that have been plundered and neglected. They're already distanced from their families, they're already distanced from their homes, and their distance from the places they grew up, from everything that is familiar to them. So this kind of social distancing has been unimaginable even in quote unquote normal times, but during the times of corona, this social distancing and the migrant has been very, very tragic. And now they have nowhere to go. I'll almost come to the conclusion. Uh, and this is something about being antisocial. And in midst of all this social distancing, uh, it's an irony, it's almost a paradox about to think about who is the most social being of all, right? Who else can spread the virus by being very, very social? So this virus spreads if you're being very social, if you're being close to each other. So who is spreading the virus by being very, very social? Of course, it is the Muslim, it is the Chinese. I am actually at loss to understand this twist in the tail in just a few months' time. It's a strange, as I said, it's a paradox. And just the other day, many of us, almost all of us here in the meeting, were anti-social beings. We were all anti-national beings. But thanks to Corona, today the conversion is almost total. It only needed a small invisible virus to convert all of us into very social beings, and very social beings were converted into anti-social beings, right? They have become so socially distant and uh, not at all social. And of course, what happened to the lockdown and the very, very socially distant people of Kashmir, none of us know. They have become a very distant memory. In fact, it is almost unbelievable for me how being antisocial has become a virtue today, right? From a few months' time when now, from the times of Kashmir to NRC to CAA, when all of us were called antisocial, today antisocial has suddenly become a traditional virtue. I mean, obviously, one has to pardon me for equating being antisocial with social distancing, but then it seems very similar to me. Antisocial, socially distanced is something that is not social, right? Socially far. It is not social, and therefore both read, interpret very similarly. So now it is people like us who are social, and the good ones are the antisocial. I want to relish this moment also while wishing for the corona to vanish. Thank you all. I'll end here. We can have some discussion. I'm not sure whether I can answer all your questions, but definitely a discussion will be worthwhile. I'm also hopeful all of us will emerge from this crisis much more stronger, not just stronger, but I am also hoping we'll all be much more gentler, kinder, and responsible. Jai Bhim once again, Jai Bhim always. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya, for that wonderful lecture within a very short span of time. Maybe in less than 35 minutes, you have covered a whole lot of area actually, from Ambedkar's own idea of the very idea of social distancing to uh, the different ideas from how the social distancing and caste violence, how you are taking a different nuanced position on caste violence and social distancing. That is that actually struck me, and that is really interesting. And how you talk about the rules of social distancing, and the very idea of social distance as a tradition, social distance as a privilege, to the way you structured your talk was actually very interesting, and I think there will be a lot of questions. What we can do is those who are having questions can uh, make a comment in that chat box. So once you have a comment, your voice will be unmuted so that you can ask directly. Am I clear? Yeah. So it's open to the audience to shoot their questions or comments. They can just raise your hands if you are on video, or otherwise you just give a notification through the chat.
There are some comments which say it is privately. Are you able to see it, or only I am able to see it?
Pardon? No, we are able to see and view you.
Not okay. No, my chat box says there is a question, but in bracket the Zoom in red it says privately. Can you see it?
So
Like
no, it's directly addressed to you. It's not
Yeah.
in the common chat. It has come to the personal chat.
maybe all of you can address to the common chat room so that
Yeah.
they can unmute your audio and you can ask.
So actually, whoever is asking a question, please put it in the chat towards everybody.
Chandu is asking Chandu is raising his hand. Chandu is asking something.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Irfan, can you just unmute Chandu?
Yeah. Chandu, you're on.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Hi, Soumya.
Hello, Chandu.
It's very good talk.
Thank
The
you.
simple questions I have. I mean, these are all these days from the time when this term came, social distance. I've been trying to understand social distance, physical distance, particularly in this context, how to distinguish these two terms, social and physical. One thing. Second thing is in the context of coronavirus, this term is it? I mean, social distance. That term has it become universal, or only confined to India? Second question. Third one is if it is confined to, I mean, if it is universal, how to understand this? Say in Indian context, we are trying to understand in the terms of caste, social distance, caste, like whatever you spoke. If it is universal, how to understand? In which terms, in which context we have to understand that? If it is US context or white context, we can say white and black, race. But if it is in Muslim countries, how to understand that term, social distance?
Should I answer or should
Yes.
we wait?
I think
Yeah,
you can,
I'm done.
you can
These are
answer.
my questions.
Sorry.
You can answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, in fact, Chandu, thanks for bringing this up. I am not sure how to differentiate between social and physical, right? There is so much overlap between these two terms. If you're socially distant, it also means you're physically distant. So if you're, being physically distant doesn't necessarily mean you're socially distant. uh, like today we are physically not together, but definitely there are many social ties that binds us together. So one is not mutually exclusive of each other, but yeah, it's not very comfortable to use physical distancing either during these times. But physical distancing doesn't have so much of a burden of social issues. It's is what right now I'm thinking, but I don't know what better terms we can use. Maybe we can collectively think about it. Yeah, but both these terms have their each different set of problems that I'm pretty sure. Yeah, social distancing, whether it is universally, these days it is universally used, and as you pointed out, and as I mentioned in the beginning of my talk, yes, it has a very obvious race burden as well. Social segregation is something that existed, even today exists, but legally existed until 1960s 1970s in the US. So social distancing is has been an issue with the race question. But the point I'm trying to say is that today, when the term has come back, nowhere else in the world people are talking about it as a good thing, right? In the sense, traditionally good, traditionally worthy, traditionally valuable. So nobody talks about social distancing as a virtuous thing, whereas it has been talked about in those terms in India. So that is the difference I'm trying to make. But in the Muslim world, as you pointed out, uh, I I have a Somali colleague here in New York who pointed out that within the Somali society, which is largely Muslim, uh, there is a tribe called Bantus, a community called Bantus, which the much privileged Somali people still, the name for Bantus, the way they address them is Adlu. I mean, I may be pronouncing it wrong, but which literally means a slave. So the practices of social distancing for them exist, and it is based on a certain kind of slavery, even though most of them are practicing Muslims. So, I mean, I know of this example, but I'm also not very sure how it can be applied elsewhere. It requires a much larger kind of an understanding. So, I mean, we also know that there are certain caste practices within different religions, be it Christianity or Islam. So one has to look into it deeply. But as of now, I am looking at social distancing as a very Hindu caste-based issue. I mean, also because only among the Hindu upper caste it is being talked about as a very good practice, which they have left behind. In other communities, I have not come across people talking about social distancing as a very good practice.
All right. Thank you, Soumya. And in the chat box, we can see one more question from Kudratullah Faraz. The question is economic distancing, which is defining as confining people to specific jobs, are more fundamental to caste system than their social distancing or physical violence?
See, I'm not sure, Kudrat, whether economic distancing can be separated from social distancing at all, right? How does the village economy still work? It works not just on a feudal agriculture kind of thing, but this feudal agriculture system is definitely a caste-based system, right? You get your work from a certain caste. And there are many instances on how, if you break the norms of the caste, the whole caste or the caste group is prohibited from work. So economic distancing is an issue, but I think it is very connected to social distancing and, of course, physical violence. They cannot be separated from each other. Is what I think. Was I clear?
Yeah, I think it was. If anyone else have any question or comments, they can just raise their hands, or you can just give in chat. Yeah.
There's this question: after effects. What are the possible after effects in our society once this pandemic issue is over?
be prophetic, I think.
I am not sure. I don't know. The name is Redmi. So I don't know what after effects. I mean, I don't know any of us can predict that. I hope we'll all survive and survive well.
Yeah. So maybe before someone else asks a question, I myself have a very small question. It is
Yeah.
this. As you said, India have a long tradition of social distancing, and it's been a privilege of someone to do the social distancing as well. But still, we can see that the very health-based social distance, which we can, it becomes very difficult to practice for Indian society. So, if caste-based system have that rigidity to make people apart socially and physically, why this physical distancing and social distancing become so difficult for Indian society? That's the first one. And second one is a bit more focused on the Muslim community. As you might know, Ansari always talks about this vanishing mediators. When the upper caste doctor comes to treat a lower caste person, the thermometer is being passed through the Muslim so that the untouchability will not get transferred. The Muslim is the purifier. So in that sense, in the contemporary sense, do you consider state, the nation state, as the mediator in this social distancing kind of process? Yeah.
I mean, when you say social distancing is difficult to practice in India, what exactly do you mean, Tahir?
India have a tradition of say, thousands of years of social distancing.
Yeah.
But still, it becomes very difficult for Indian society to practice in the contemporary scenario. We can see that people are coming together to gather, even for it, whether it is for banging the, clinking the plates or making the sounds, or even for the pujas or whatever. So a society, a nation which has a tradition of social distancing for a long time, find it very difficult to practice the physical distancing.
Yeah, in fact, the only answer I can think of right now is how this social distancing is also a very gendered idea, right? I find it very difficult, especially for men, to stay inside their homes and do what is useful, right? Uh, I I think this banging of plates, going outside and celebrating puja or whatever is exclusively, almost 95% of them are male. So I really think a home has become a distant space for men. And what kind of productive work, productivity one can practice at home is not imagined or practiced by the menfolk in most communities. And this is very thinking aloud kind of an answer, but I can see that I just mentioned in a line when I was talking that there are so many jokes about how men are learning household chores in these times of corona, right? It is just an indication as to how difficult it is for men to uh, stay home quietly is impossible, even difficult to do simple acts of cooking or other sweeping or whatever kind of work which a woman regularly does and keeps herself busy. So I think uh, that being distant from this kind of a home makes you push towards the a social space where there are gatherings. And what determines those kind of gatherings, whether people of different caste groups come together in these celebrations, that is another question to ask. But yeah, right now I can only think of the gendered aspect answer to that question. Whether government is a mediator to in such kind of issues of practices of social distancing. It's a very I don't know, Tahir. It's a difficult question. It looks like that, right? Government is putting themselves in the center of the whole crisis and telling us what to do, what not to do. Whether government becomes a purifying agent like the Muslim does, it's a it's a I don't know, but there are also I have also read how Syrian Christians in Kerala did this job, right, of purifying agents, of being purifying agents by washing the vessels of the temples and so on and so forth. Um, but whether government can take such a role, whether we can understand it like that, I have to think more. No.
Okay, so I think there are some more questions. Irfan, can you unmute Selma? She's asking something. Soumya, I think Selma is joining from Germany.
It says Salman Ashraf. I was doubtful, but is it Salma?
Yeah, I think. Irfan, can you just unmute Selma?
Hello. I don't know why it's given Germany. I'm not from Germany. I am from Hyderabad.
That's nice.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, Selma is somewhere laughing.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
All right. So I'm just going to read out the typed question. So thank you for the talk. My question is a follow-up to the last typed one, which was not answered. The government would be ready with all kinds of excuses for the fail of the economy and every other things for which I believe we should be prepared for, since this is a battle against a fascist regime. So I wish to receive a response. Yeah, that is it. Thank you.
The government will be ready with all kinds of excuses for the fail of economy, yes, and every other thing for which I believe we should be prepared.
Yes.
Since this is a battle against yes, obviously, I agree with you, Salman. This has become kind of a mask. This crisis has become a mask to hide many things, one of which is the failure of economy. I don't know what lies in store for us. We have to be prepared, which is for sure. It also makes me wonder because I hear the government in Karnataka, which is the BJP-led government, has been asking. In fact, many of the groups which I was part of have been asked to not post anything until the end of the lockdown because the government apparently said there are very harmful messages against people of some communities, obviously Muslims. So when BJP government is saying stop messages that demonize Muslims, I don't know how to think through this, right? So there are a whole lot of things that are happening which Corona has been used as a mask. And yes, we need to be better prepared to deal with this. And definitely the economy, the jobs, many of us are quite in fact it's a luxury for all of us to sit like this and discuss and have our salaries safe, but I don't know how the majority in India will come back to their regular jobs after this crisis is over. Yeah, I agree with you. And sorry, we have a friend called Salma Ashraf, many of us, who is in Germany. So that name misled us to think you were her.
There's so many questions are there which came in the general chat, I think. There is a question from Beena. I will unmute.
Oh, yeah.
Wait a sec. It's technically very.
Yes.
Yes, I think you can hear me. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, friends. This is Bharat from Shillong. I mean, I don't want to give an introduction. I happen to be Soumya's student and now I'm a faculty. So I was halfway through the lecture. I have some concerns about how can we understand this, the very idea of social distancing and what possible implications that it would have in the future. I mean, you're talking especially in terms of education and of I mean, this would be a kind of a reason and excuse for the current government. But apart from that, ma'am, can you think about any other large implications?
I am sorry, but the only thing I've been thinking about is getting back to Hyderabad. So I have thought about larger implications. Yeah, education is definitely one. I this. What is the larger implication? I don't know. I mean, related to that, there is a question from Prajna who says, I can read that out. Prajna, you can unmute Prajna Irfan. Can everybody see that question? So Prajna says this crisis has also become an opportunity like that of economic and whatever for many to justify the confinement of women, especially for the among the upper caste. And there has been a huge exaltation in the domestic violence. So do you think the fight women have led so far, it will take a plunge and it will require to begin again? So there are, so this is, one is the economic crisis, which we have to look at. One is the education, perhaps the gendered practice. I am not whether caste practices of social distancing, whether this crisis will have implications on that. I don't know how all these things, whether we are going back ahead, back in time, or whether we are mutating certain practices in order to, bring about caste in much newer ways than it is currently in practice. Yes, there could be hundreds of implications, but one can never be sure. Yeah.
Do you have anything to add, Pragya? Is that question answered?
No, I just thought I thought that this is also something which we can look into, because there are people who are justifying this, and those messages are getting circulated that how women have stayed inside, and they are trying to justify that they are the they hold the society, and here also how they are participating and all those things. So this is very problematic, and one needs to question this. And I feel that they will try to reinforce this kind of confinement, and it may whatever we have fought for so far, we may have to be more fierce in our fight after the this lockdown and all this COVID thing ends.
Is there any study or report on how domestic
I was
violence has
watching.
increased?
Yeah, I was reading. There's this one Hindi news channel. It's a YouTube channel sort of. This is called Lalan Talk. So I was listening to them, and they were talking about this, and they were showing some reports that how male patients are more than female patients, and how people are and the conversation around it, they were trying to talk about it. So that's what I found it really worrisome that
But there is a, I forgot where I read that, whether in New York Times or some newspaper article, which a couple, both who are doctors and research-based doctors, wrote about historically how women seem to be more immune to certain diseases. Men, for whatever reasons, it's not very clear, but it has been the data is very clear that men are susceptible to many diseases, not as immune as women are. So I don't, if we believe that, then this thing that it is because of social distancing that women are much safer, that is, obviously it doesn't hold, but it also, I mean, I think any kind of history of the disease which I was talking about has shown, has not really discriminated between gender or caste. It has affected everyone, people of all kinds. So I mean, these things can be easily disproven, is what I would think.
Yeah. I think we have more questions. Kurram is saying, I have a question. Irfan, can you just unmute Kurram?
Yeah, it's unmuted.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that talk, man.
Can you talk a bit louder?
No, yeah, I can't hear.
Thank you for that talk, man. I have this question that, there are attempts to sort of naturalize caste, right? A lot of times people do that. And
Still louder. Who's this? Sorry, I can't hear well.
ma'am, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was saying that there are attempts to sort of naturalize caste.
Yeah.
Even in our classrooms when sociology teachers teach us. So this one instance where she gave this example of how hygiene becomes a reason to sort of to distance from people or practice untouchability.
Yeah.
But when in times like pandemic, when people sort of, all of us, regardless of what caste they have to practice social distancing. So how does, I'm saying that how does hygiene, the question of hygiene sort of plays this role of plays this role of maybe naturalizing the caste or attempts to nationalize caste without considering the question of violence.
Can you repeat the last sentence? How can we understand hygiene without?
How does the hygiene plays the role in understanding of caste without actually addressing the question of violence?
Without addressing the question of violence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. One cannot address the question of hygiene without addressing the question of violence. I mean, I think the first thing to do is to break the relationship between hygiene and caste, hygiene and people who clean as being unhygienic. This is a very, very how do I put it? A connection that is not at all valid, not at all logical. To call people who clean your houses, to call people who clean your toilets as unhygienic, right? They're the people who keep everything around us, them clean. So to call them as unhygienic is something that is beyond me to understand. So once we break this assumption that people who clean are unhygienic and people who are being clean as hygienic and pure, I think this logic of violence and logic of connecting caste, lower caste people as unhygienic, that will resolve itself. Yes, definitely it's a violence, and it is not just the question of hygiene. Hygiene very clearly implies the question of purity. By purity, what people mean is, people who believe in the caste ideology would mean is that because you don't have to clean yourselves, you're pure, right? Or almost in those terms. So being hygiene is somebody who doesn't involve in any act of cleaning at all. It is the others who involve in the act of cleaning, and therefore you are pure because you are away from the acts of cleaning. So in fact, that is more unhygienic so to speak. So I think that chain, if we break, then violence becomes clear, and who is hygiene, and all these questions become quite clear.
Yeah, thank you, Soumya. And I think a lot more questions are coming, but we at the end we may have to limit also. So I think we can take 3 more questions, Soumya.
Yeah, you organize. You can decide, Tahir.
Yeah. So there is one question from Abur Pandey. I have missed that question earlier. Yeah. So that is there in the chat box if you can find it. Or if Abur Pandey is there, you can just.
You can read it out, Apur. Yeah.
Abur, are you there? Otherwise, we'll go to the next question from.
Maybe I will just read
Yeah.
it out. Apur,
Hello.
yeah.
Apur, yeah.
Yeah, there's some. Okay, I'll read out the question. It was about the last part of your lecture. I had some confusion there. You were pointing out the irony that those who were considered antisocial some time ago are now the ones who are seen as breaking social distancing norms most prominently, right?
Yes.
So how do we call those? First of all, which group were you referring to when you said antisocial? Was it the, as I've mentioned there, was it the people who were opposing CAA, NRC, and other fascistic, Islamophobic legislation that was being doled out? Was it those people who you're calling antisocial? And then if you're calling them antisocial, how? Because people were coming out in large numbers, right? So antisocial in what sense then?
Antisocial in a majoritarian sense, no, it is not a derogatory term. This is how the government and also dominant ideologies have termed protesting people protesting against CAA or NRC or against the Kashmir lockdown. So antisocial, as understood by the dominant, whether it is governmental or non-governmental ideologies, it's I don't consider these people anti-national, anti-social at all. Yes, is that clear?
Abur, still there? Yeah. Otherwise, we can move to the next question from Shilpa Anand, and I think the question is from Amit.
Yeah.
Is Amit there?
Amit?
Or otherwise, I'll just read out the question. Just wanted to elicit your thoughts on the culpability of violating distancing being assigned to migrant laborers rushing home. Invariably, many of whom belong to marginalized communities and castes, Muslims in Delhi, Sikhs most recently.
Culpability of violating distancing being assigned to migrant. I think this is also connected to the previous question, right? People who were not really social in the dominant understanding of the term now have to be actually antisocial. So it is an irony, but again, the migrant question is very, very different because there is no way that they can practice social distancing, but at the same time, there is a violence, a pressure of violence on them to practice social distancing, and it's a bit, in such a vulnerable situation. How do we understand this act of being social, act of being socially distant is it's very, very difficult. Yeah, Amit, we can talk later again on this. Yeah, there is a question from Asaf Muhammad which touches upon violence and social distancing. Is Asaf there?
I think Asaf is unable to make his audio on or something.
So he writes how he's confused whether it is necessary to touch a body for something that we call violence. Can we think of caste itself as violence, structural violence? Secondly, when we solve this by arguing violence in terms of breaking norms, what would be the value we attribute to violence while norms are relative? See, that's a discussion, as I said, I was having with Chaitanya right in the, 2 hours ago. So it's a very new to me thinking along. Yes, caste is a structural violence. You can practice without actually touching the body. Violence is, of course, practiced without touching the body. There are all kinds of violences possible within the caste system. So it's not necessarily a violence where you touch the body. That is absolutely, I agree with it. Breaking the norms and there which results in violence is just one part of caste violence, and of course these violence is relative, depends on where you are in the hierarchy and what you did in order to be punished with a certain kind of violence. So violence is relative within this system of within this structural caste system. That's right. Is Tahir there or Irfan? I can't.
Yeah, I'm here. I think there is a question from Lakshman.
Okay. How could we be social and yeah, it's irony of the term and the practice itself, being social and being distant at the same time. It's yeah, it's funny. I don't know if we can be social and be distant at the same time, but I think this Zoom meeting is an example. We are social, definitely. We are also distant, physically distant, not close, but there are many things that brings us together. Yeah. Yeah, even caste is like that, right? Whether you live in any part of the world, you're physically away from each other, but socially bound by ideologies of caste or the ties of caste or even the rituals of caste. So there are perhaps many ways in which social and being distant come together. That's right. There's one from Ghanshyam. Can you unmute Ghanshyam?
I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ghanshyam can talk now. Ghanshyam, are you there? Okay, I'll read out the question then.
Mm-hmm.
So, does any intersectional analysis of social physical distancing in the context of increased domestic violence during the lockdown generate different meanings apart from its casteist connotations?
Yeah, this is quite similar to what Prajna asked, right? I mean, the only way to interpret this is to see how caste works only in a casteist, patriarchal kind of a setup. I mean, it's all of us would be aware of what Ambedkar wrote, that caste propagates itself by practice of endogamy, right? That is by not marrying your caste girl to another caste person. So by controlling a woman's sexuality, basically a caste system works. So this kind of a social distancing and domestic violence obviously has to be understood within gendered practices of caste, which to me is quite clear. And there's a related question by Nikin now, which says, I said, this Nikin is a Mallu, Professor said, so it's a not Soumya or you said, but professor said 95% men came out to bank plates. But in my neighborhood in Delhi, young couples, middle-aged women, and some Northeast couples participated. No, not, I didn't exactly mean that 95% of men came to bank plates. What I meant is, it is what we see as public, what we understand as public, is essentially male, right? Uh, So, why is it difficult to practice social distancing? Is because men are not trained to be in a private uh, uh, kind of a space at home. Their training is largely to be out there in the public. This is what I meant. Yes, I also saw videos and photographs and read about how there were many men and women also who came to do such things.
Yeah, I think we have a last question from BB. Who is BB? Can you hear me?
You can talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the last question from BB. Is BB? Who is BB? Is it
You have unmuted BP. Are you there?
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
My question is, as I've written, like I'm a little bit confused with this analogy of social distancing and caste, because I see same analogy in an article by Arundhati Roy also. Like she's also making a comparison, making an image like both are kind of same. But what I felt is, in a caste society, even though they are practicing a kind of physical distance, the functioning of society goes normal, like the production, consumption, and everything. But on the other hand, the social distancing we are facing right now is causing serious setbacks in the proper social functions and production in many places outside of subcontinent. So I'm a little bit confused. How isn't it a kind of a simplification, or how accurate this analogy?
No, see, although I strongly believe that social distancing is one of the founding blocks of caste, of understanding caste, but then I have repeated this 2 or 3 times now. The problem now is, why is social distancing seen as a traditional virtue among the Hindu upper caste, right? I was referring to the messages and the ideas that are circulating when social distancing was made mandatory to contain the virus. So many people are seeing social distancing as a very good thing that traditionally which was practiced, and how this traditional practice has kept people away from diseases, right? Because we are no more longer practicing social distancing, all these diseases are coming in, is what they were arguing. So in this context, definitely social distancing meant practices of caste, right? Obviously, there are many ways in which social distancing is practiced, many ways in which social distancing has changed its practice also. It's no longer practiced traditionally, what is understood as traditionally, but it has mutated its practices. But when you say social distancing is a very good practice that was practiced by Hindu caste system, then there is a problem, right? Then there is a big problem. So although it is a simplification, I do think there is a fundamental connection between social distancing and caste. Caste does work through social distancing in very many ways.
I think we are almost done with the questions. So I think we can give a last chance to Kurram, and we will wind up with that question. I think he is having one more question, it seems. Is that fine?
Yeah, fine with me, Tahir. Yeah.
So Kurram, go ahead.
I actually wrote the question already. It's about like how does social location of a person affects in the practicing of social distancing and the relation with the caste. So how important is so particular social location that belongs.
Kurram, I think you should talk a bit louder.
Yeah, I'm saying that how does social location of a person affect in practicing of social distancing and then its relation with the caste? Is it audible?
Yeah.
It's not very clearly audible, but is this what you have written, typed it out? Yeah. The presumption of being unhygienic in the slums of people who reside in the slums only seems fair in that perspective. I mean, again, I think it is a presumption, Kurram, because although the drainage system, which is not the problem of the people who reside, but the problem of governance, a problem of other structures in place, problem of drainage, problem of better health care, problem of water, regular water supply, all these things which affects your hygiene is not really the problem of the people who reside there, right? But when you look at the people who reside there, look at the houses, look at the spaces they inhabit, I am not sure if we can actually assume whether it's a fair assumption that such people can be hygienic. They cannot be socially, physically distant because it is crowded. It is a problem with our system itself. And who inhabit these slum spaces are again a huge question, right? I mean, I don't think there are many Nayars or many Reddys or many Brahmins who are there in the slums. It is largely the Dalit and the Bahujan castes who inhabit these some slum spaces, and the systemic problems in those spatial living habitats is not a problem of people who reside there, but a problem of our system itself.
Yeah. I think we can wind up if that is fine.
Thank you, everyone. I am not sure if I answered your question satisfactorily, but it is a process of thinking aloud, and I hope we can continue this conversation in many platforms, offline and online.
Yeah, and
thank you, everyone. Yeah.
I invite maybe to give an official vote of thanks. I invite Afnan. Yeah.
In fact, Salma has just come in, Tahir, and she's asking whether we can see Kashmir in the context of social distancing. Yeah.
Towards the end of the talk, somewhere you came to issue of Kashmir as well. Towards the end of your talk, you came to the issue of Kashmir as well.
Yeah, which is doubly socially distant and politically distant. Salma, I'm sorry. Yes, in the context of social distancing, I think, as I said in the talk, it has become for most of us a very distant memory, right? It is really become distant. In fact, there was a panel discussion here.
Yeah.
Can you